Story's everything. Story is how culture was passed down for generations and generations. Story is what has perpetuated humanity in a sense. And so I think we all are story. We're all living story. And we have control over that story if we want that story to change and go somewhere else from there. It's kind of like the choose your own ending book.
For some of us who have struggled and wrestled, I'm kind of coming on the other side of this where it's like, man, for us to be able to offer some smaller like social content type videos where it doesn't have to look and feel super cinematic. It's just like, man, they just need this content, whether it's internal or external. Show up for your clients and help them. Serve them. If they say we don't need that, is there something that you can offer that will help them? And those things will probably grow your business.
You know, I think that last piece that we talked about there is so important, is just figure out where to add the value. When you can show people the value in what you provide, that's where you're really going to land more clients. And then once you do that, start to hone in that process, right? Get your standard procedures down, get your work down so that you can outsource it to an editor, get those processes down so that you're not stuck being the person that's working, inside the business, but rather you're working on the business.
On episode 414 of the podcast, we talk about how to successfully transition from in-person to remote editing while maintaining quality and client satisfaction, why downsizing physical space and overhead can lead to greater business flexibility and profitability. So if you're a person who's dreaming about having a studio one day, some interesting things in here. And if you're like me and you've had a studio and you're thinking, what would life look like without a studio? This is a fun conversation. And then we also talk about how to build and leverage strategic referral partnerships to secure high value video production projects. Hey, welcome to the Grow Your Video Business show. I'm excited to bring you my conversation with Zephan Moses Blaxburg, who is the owner of ZMB Media. In this episode, you're going to discover why Zephan transformed his video production business by embracing remote editing, why he chose to give up his studio space for more flexibility, and some practical strategies, building profitable referral partnerships. My name is Ryan Coral. I'm the host of this show. If this is your first time here, welcome. Super excited to have you. This is really, really cool. Let's just take a minute. Do you watch remember Blue's Clues? Do you watch Blue's Clues? Probably not. But remember Blue's Clues. I just saw, I went to his Instagram because it popped up, and he does this thing where he's like, hey, how you doing? And then he just like sits there and like responds to like nobody talking. But like if you're on the other end, you can talk to him, and it's interesting. And anyway, I was trying that. I'm so happy that you're here. I launched this show years ago. I mean, we're episode 400 something. And my heart and desire, ever since I started my video production business 20 years ago, we've seen a lot of ups and a lot of downs. We've had years of revenue, over $1 million in video production work, and then plenty of years where it like hasn't been close to that. Building a team, having a studio, all the things. Ever since the beginning of me starting in business, I've always wanted to share the things that I'm learning, and that's what this show is. The community that I've built, the online courses that I offer, the coaching, the masterminds, all of those things are designed to help give you opportunities to get plugged in, to not feel like you're on an island and that you have to do this business thing on your own, that you have to figure out, how do I price myself, and what do I do when I have a client who doesn't like what I did, or I'm just feeling overwhelmed. I've got small kids at home and I don't know when I'm supposed to find the time to edit these projects. Can I hire somebody? What does that look like? How do you pay somebody? What does that look like? My friend, if any of that resonates, you are in the right place. This is the place where I've tried to design the things that I do intentionally to help you. So I'm glad you're here, and this is a fun episode. If you are brand new, you probably haven't checked out the free workshop that I offer. I call it our 6-figure filmmaker workshop. Is that what I call it? I think so. But in this like 45-minute or so workshop, I kind of share like my 3 big things that I've learned over the years so that you can fail faster. You can learn from my mistakes, and obviously you'll learn from your own mistakes, but hear from some of the things that I've done to help build a multiple six-figure video production business with team members and all of those things. You can access this workshop by going to studiosherpas.com/workshop, and there will be a link to that workshop in the show notes as well. So anyway, I'm super pumped that you're here. Take advantage of that workshop if you haven't watched it yet at studiosherpas.com/workshop, and look forward to hearing what you think about the workshop itself. And then I'll come back on just for a short minute after the interview and wrap things up. So let's jump into the episode. Okay, here we go. What's up, friends? Hey, welcome to another episode of the show. Today with me is Zephan Moses Blaxburg, who is the owner of ZMB Media. Zephan, I'm super excited. I know it's early in the morning for both of us. We are either drinking coffee or just finishing coffee, but I'm pumped you're here, dude. This is I'm excited for our conversation today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here too, and I've got the coffee ready, so let's do it.
I love it. Well, so give us a little background. You run a production company. You said you don't want to be called the owner, president, CEO, but I'm going to call you all of those things because that is what you are. But where did your passion, your love for video start?
I've always loved cameras. I actually have two cameras. They're behind me tucked away there, but one of them belonged to my grandfather and one of them belonged to my great-grandfather. So I kind of feel like it's run in my blood a little bit. But I'd have to date it back to when my parents gifted me a Fisher-Price toy camera from like Toys R Us, taking it way back.
Dude, the one with
it took film.
These tapes.
Yeah.
Oh,
it took film.
That's amazing.
And it was just like the coolest toy ever. I was probably 5 or 6 years old. And, after that went away for many years and I grew up, my mom later gifted it to me on like my 20th birthday or something like that.
Dude.
But like that sparked it all. I loved the idea of like freezing a moment in time and documenting stuff. And, I think it was also really crucial to see how important photos were in my family's history. Like when they immigrated to the United States, we actually have an entire printed book with photos of the passenger manifest on the ship that they immigrated on. So, I loved the meaning behind photos in general and just that freeze frame in time. And then of course, video is like a natural progression from there, and just being able to document something that might not ever happen again or even happen the same way. I just thought that was really nifty.
What is story? What is that word? What does that mean to you?
Oof. Story's everything. I self-published a book a few years ago called Life Rescripted, and the idea was looking at your life as if it's a movie script, and it was told in the way that you go to the movie theater. So buying your tickets, walking up to the counter, picking out which candy or snack you want to bring with you, making sure you get there so the show starts on time, and showing up, right? And so to me, I relate the story to a lot of how our lives operate. Story is how culture was passed down for generations and generations. Story is what has perpetuated humanity in a sense. And so I think we all are story. We're all living story, and we have control over that story if we want that story to change and go somewhere else from there. It's kind of like the choose your own ending book.
Ooh. What was I just watching? I feel like, I think the Detroit Lions, my favorite football team ever, finally they're good. But on Sunday, they were talking about, because the Lions were just destroying the Cowboys. And one of the announcers said that's like choose your own adventure. Like they're like everything that they're doing here is like they're got these amazing endings. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is how this game actually worked out. Those were my favorite, man. I got everyone from the library back in the day.
Being able to witness that all the way through and to feel like you had a hand in creating that too, right? Because it's like, it always said, like, turn to page 28 if you want this to happen, or turn to page 46 if that happens. And like, that, like, I think I had a Super Mario one where it was like, turn to this page, and then it's like, oh, you died. And then you could be like, nope, don't like that. Going back. And I think that's how life is you can pick and choose your story, and you can also look at parts of that story and you can say like, no, I don't like that. Let's go rewrite that. Let's go make a new part of that story.
Yeah, except for the if you die.
Right. Let's not do that. Let's avoid that one.
But that is, I mean, that's a powerful thought. And I'm really grateful that we're even talking about this, because in our businesses and our personal lives, the overlap that's there, if you're stuck, frustrated, if things aren't going, how you desire them to go, it's like you have the option, you have the opportunity, and are you going to take it? And I remember I would always like, put my one finger in the page that I was flipping from, and then flip, because
you might have to go back.
I love that analogy. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah.
So
I think I learned that early on, and I was very lucky to learn it. And it was through a ton of mistake, right? Like it was not something where like some mentor came down from the heavens and was like, let me impart this wisdom on you. It was like, no, I screwed up majorly plenty of times. And then eventually was like, yep, don't like that. Let's change that. And it's just about remembering that like that power is in your hands. You can change that destiny. You can change it to be whatever you want. And it's just about like sitting down, write out the script of what you want it to be, and work backwards and figure out like, okay, what's it going to take to get there?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Well, tell us what does the business look like today? I know we were talking before we hit record. It looks a lot different than it did previously. Like what kind of stuff are you doing today? What does your team look like?
Yeah, it started as just me. I was working for the Apple Store Genius Bar, and I walked in one day with a letter in hand, and one of my coworkers was like egging me on. He was like, "You won't quit. You won't do it." And I kind of waved like the envelope as I walked into the store, and I saw him in the back of the room. And 2 weeks later, my LLC was born, and ZMB Media became a company, so to speak. Not necessarily a real company yet, because I didn't have clients yet, but that was the start. And so it started as like anything I could get, right? It was a wedding client. I remember sitting there with them at like Panera, just trying to like pitch them all my services and trying so hard to convince them that like, I get it. I don't have this established portfolio. I can't show you 20 other weddings, but if you just trust me. And I think they bought into me. And that's where it started, was just, anything I could get my hands on. People bought into me and who I was, and they trusted me. And then I very quickly realized, like, I hate weddings. I hate filming them. Yeah. They're very long days. And I traded those in for really long days in live streaming events and conferences. So I didn't really get rid of that. But yeah, it transformed a lot. It started as a lot of nonprofit work, some corporate work, some small business and solopreneur work. And now it's really kind of grown into this place where I'm 11 years in, and I really sat down and said, okay, like, what is it that I do the most? Because that's where I'm going to put my focus and my efforts. And it came down to roughly 4 things. The first one being live streaming, just in general, events, conferences, town halls. We just had a funeral yesterday that was streamed. There's anything that we stream. The second is being able to create those corporate videos. So those are the promotional videos, the testimonial videos that might go on your website. The third being social media clips. And then from there, there's a fourth one that's kind of more of conference coverage. So it's not live streaming. It's more of, we have a conference. We want to be able to sell recap videos, highlight videos that can help promote the conference for next year, sell more tickets, and also maybe recording like keynote speaker coverage, anything like that. So those were like the 4 pockets that things kind of fell into, and that's where I've placed my focus. And it's predominantly 50-50 when it comes to live streaming versus just corporate video, and then everything else kind of falls in between.
And you had mentioned at one point, I think, did you have a studio, employees?
Yeah, so I took on a studio in November of 2020, which if you know what happened that year, you would have said you were crazy. I took on a studio, and to get things moving, I actually partnered with a local university to get some interns on board. So I would get one or two interns per semester from the school. And that was kind of how I eased into that comfort of being able to hire other people, because at first I was really hesitant and I didn't want to have someone full time that I was, obligated to put food on their table and make sure that their checks were paid. And so that got me started. And then what really everything morphed into was building out this amazing team of freelancers that I can call upon at any time. Many of them were the interns that had trained up, so they knew the drill, they knew how I operate, they knew what case this piece of gear goes into. And so that was kind of my initial start into growing that business. And so I had the studio all through the pandemic, and I had it on a 3-year lease. And then when it came time to renew that lease, I kind of looked at it and said, okay, I can either keep this here as is, the price is going to increase because the landlord knows that they can get more money now. Or I can go for something bigger. And I did explore that. I looked at a bigger space, maybe splitting it with a few people. Or I could just really look at this from a business and a financial decision and say, you know what? Is this money better served somewhere else? Because the studio quickly became this YouTube playground for me, which was awesome because I have my space to go to, but it wasn't really being used as much for client work anymore now that everything was happening back in person. And a lot of those live events were my main clients. So it was a glorified storage unit for the gear. And it was my weekend YouTube playground when I was recording content. It just didn't make sense to keep that. And I felt that the money was better served somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. So you did not renew that, and as far as your team, did you take things in a new direction?
Yeah, so I chose to kind of downsize. I got rid of probably almost 50% of what I had because I had built these studio backdrops that I was using, like elaborate fake wood plank walls with LED lights built into them. And I got rid of all that stuff, and I'm actually now down to 3 or 4 4 by 8 foot shelving units of gear, and they're actually in my condo in the spare bedroom. And that is what I did. I downsized, and I took that money and I said, you know what? Editing is the one thing that takes the most time for me, not because I'm not fast at it, but because it takes me away from being there at the live event. And so if I'm working a conference and I got to be there at 7 a.m. and I don't get home till 6 or 7 at night, or even later sometimes, that means that I'm editing at 9 o'clock at night or on the weekends. Right. And that really invades my personal time, my family time with friends. And so I thought if I could get that off my plate and spend just about as much as I was spending on the studio, that seems like a good business decision to me because it gives me more time and freedom, and it allows me to delegate the things that, I shouldn't have to be doing to someone else.
Yeah. So what did that feel like? Because I know, I've got a studio. It's like 5,800 square feet. We've got amazing psych wall. We've got an upstairs. We've got podcast setups, and there's conference room, it's just like all of the things. And it's expensive. Yeah. I mean, I think I shouldn't even say the last, like through the pandemic when my landlord was like, well, we can kind of pause your payments, but then you're going to, you'll have to pick up and back pay.
Right.
Like, well, that doesn't really seem amazing. So since then, we're 4 years later, I still am like, should I renew? Because it is so expensive. What kind of freedoms, or what did it feel like to not have, full-time employees, to not have this lease? Paint the other side of the picture.
Yeah. I mean, it's scary at first to offload editing. I think that's probably one of the bigger things that most videographers are afraid of is like, I don't trust someone else to do this because they're not going to do it as good as me, as fast as me.
Yeah.
And they're just going to mess it up, and it's going to be more of a headache for me, or it's going to take longer to get this project back to the client. And I had that same fear. I went through a couple editors. I went through a few people where it was like, oh my God, like I feel like I'm spending so much time on revisions and, getting them to get this right before I can even send it back to the client, that it's like, I should have just done this myself. And
Yeah.
I think that once you realize you can reserve certain projects for yourself if and when you want to do that, but it becomes more of a choice rather than a requirement. It becomes this thing where it's like, I can say, oh, I have tomorrow free and open. Let me just, nail this project because I know I can do it real fast. But it also gives you that freedom to say, you know what? I have this project coming up where I'm going to have to edit 40 short form videos. And that sounds annoying. And I'm just going to send it to my guy. And of course, like the one that's working for me, he's overseas. So what's really great is like I can send him a project at 6, 7 at night. And by 9 a.m. the next morning, I've got an email in my inbox that says, here's something to review. And so that's really kind of a huge bonus for me, because it's like I can basically get edits back from a client, send the revisions to my editor, and by the next morning they've got a link in their inbox to see that update. So when we're really rocking and rolling, it allows me to do more than I was ever doing on my own. And it gave me back nights and weekends. It gave me back the freedom of choice, right? It's no longer this, I have to do this. It's I can choose to do this. And that opened up a whole new world of flexibility in my work. And then it kind of became like, well, if he's editing my client videos, what else can he edit? And I was like, I have a YouTube channel where I make videos weekly, and I've been doing that myself. What if I throw him my client videos and my YouTube videos? And he just flew with it. And so we use Frame.io. We'll get an uploaded draft. I leave my notes, says, hey, here's the revisions to make. Boom, boom, boom. He does it overnight, which is his daytime. It's back in the morning. And it's like, holy crap. Like I went to sleep and I woke up with a YouTube video and 2 client videos that are like, 90% of the way there. I'll download them in my free time or lunch break or whatever and watch through and make any final notes for him. And I can just get stuff back so much faster. And I'm not pulling out my hair when I'm on revision number 18, because that's his job now.
Yep.
It gave a lot of freedom and flexibility, and I think it got rid of a lot of overhead, because when you own a studio, it's not just your rent payment. A lot of people don't realize that you've got to have insurance for that building. You've got to have, like, I had the fire department had to come in every 6 months to check the alarms and the emergency signs and whatever. Like there's way more to it that you don't think about. Or like if it snows, they will send you the bill that is split based on your square footage of the building. And you don't realize, because it snows December, January, February, and then come March, you get a bill that says, here's the hundreds of dollars you owe for snow removal and like salting the walkways. And it's like, I wasn't even thinking of that because winter's gone.
Yeah.
And now I'm getting hit with hundreds of dollars out of nowhere. So you don't realize there are a lot of hidden expenses. And I think it's one of those things where when you get that space, you're going to find ways to fill it. So you're going to make excuses to buy more stuff, and when you don't always need it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm just thinking about all the stuff that we have. I'm like, we
bought it for that one thing, and we were like, oh yeah, we'll definitely use this again, and it's been sitting in a closet for 2 years.
Oh goodness, I'm really curious to hear how you, just because most people, when they think about hiring an editor, just like you said, it's like, how am I going to hand that off? Like that's how, when I got into this, I realized I was pretty good at this editing thing. So getting to that spot or that place where you are comfortable, and it's almost like a drug, where it's like, oh man, I can't wait to get this off to somebody else, to where, in the morning I'm going to see the first draft of it. This is really cool. What best practices have you learned when working with a new editor? What might be helpful for somebody to kind of get over the hump of, I really should look into this?
Yeah, I think it comes down to building out your standard operating procedures. And this came from tons of various business books. But if you think about your business, right? If you got sick tomorrow, let's say you get COVID or the flu or something, and you're out for 5 or 6 days, and you needed to be able to hand a handbook off to somebody and be like, here's how everything works. That's your standard operating procedures. And so that gets built up over time from experience. Initially, I had actually hired a company that had one of those deals of like unlimited editing for, $9.99 a month. And I was watching how they operated, and I picked out the pieces that I liked and the pieces that I didn't like. And some of it was there was a language barrier. So the editors that they got were from a certain country where they could read and write English, but it was a little bit broken. But I liked that they were using a platform where I could pause, leave time-coded notes, and I can say, here's a spelling error, or take this clip out. And so I was starting to see what worked and what didn't work. And then when I started to incorporate a few of those things, and I found my editor was through Upwork.com. My brother actually runs a business with an editor, and he uses onlinejobs.ph. So I was hearing a lot more about how hiring people in the Philippines, they're pretty fluent in English. And I was quite surprised, like even the occasional email where the English was broken, it was still very understandable, and they understood what I was saying. And so I was starting to figure out the things that worked, which was, one, they need feedback, right? You can't just hope that they're going to have this vision in their head of what you were hoping to create. Right. I think being able to create screen recordings where you can scrub through a video and say, hey, I like what you did here. Let's pull this transition out here. Really just giving them feedback that makes sense. Like, have you ever had a client and they're like, yeah, we want the music to sound less corporate-y, and you're like, I don't know what that sounds like, because that doesn't describe anything. And then like,
make this shot better.
Right.
It's like, what is better? What do you mean?
And when you get down to it, they're just like, oh, we just didn't like that there were like drums behind it, and it wasn't like, it's some dumb thing. So like, you have to get really specific with your feedback to them. You have to kind of show them like, here's exactly what I want.
Yeah.
And once they get it, and it clicks, and they remember for the future, oh, I don't like this style of edit. We have to do it this way. A good editor will pick it up, and just constant communication. I'm probably talking to my editor Monday through Friday over messaging pretty much every day. And that's to check in on certain projects. That's for him to send me clarifying questions. So I encourage him anytime there's something that doesn't make sense to let me know. And sometimes that's the notes that came back from the client that I might have copied and pasted over to him. And he's like, oh, I don't know what this means. It gives me an opportunity to flag something within the project to make sure that I still keep my hands in it and that I'm not just stepping away completely. So I'm still keeping myself invested in the edits and the revisions that are happening. I'm staying aware of that stuff. And then you just kind of start to refine and hone that process. So I started to notice that my clients, when they received a Frame.io link, they didn't totally know what to do. They would actually write the notes in an email and send it back to me.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, okay, like my standard operating procedure now is I'm going to make a template email that I send to every client, and it explains this video. You can play, you can pause in the comments section below the video. That's where you'll leave your comments. So when you have a note, you can leave it there. And I just wrote a simple 3 or 4 sentence template. But by having that, and it's like, this is what we use every time, I have maybe once in the last year had a client do the whole type it up in the email and send it to me. And
right.
That's fine, whatever, I'll make it work. But, it really kind of streamlined the process. And that's what you're looking for, is how do we make this more efficient? Yeah. How do we make things easier and make them make sense for everybody, whether they're an experienced editor or a client that's doing their first video they've ever worked on?
Yeah. I love that. I mean, with my team, they're right across the hall from me when I'm at the studio. And there's an edit. I'm watching it in Frame.io. I can leave feedback and notes, but exactly to your point, it's like I might say, make this shot better. But then for me to expound on that with a video to say like, hey, see how this like shot like butts up against this one? There should be some kind of a, the transition is just too rough or harsh. Like make this a little bit soft. Like when you can articulate and kind of share your, just put the emphasis on the things that you really are meaning to emphasize and explain a little bit more, people learn. Your people will learn. they could be overseas or across the hall, and to create videos like that. I mean, that's where in the past, employees of mine who I was trying to get them to hire contractors or work with an intern, they would let the intern or whoever take a project to like 40 or 50%. And then they would just say like, okay, this is annoying. I feel like I'm giving too many instructions here. So it's just going to be faster for me to finish it. And the challenge with that is that you always end up with that person doing the work where you're trying to grow the team and you're trying to, let's dial in what are our processes when we create a brand film or a, live stream edit or whatever. What are the things that we're always doing? What are the things that we never want to do? If you can document them with copy, that's great. If you can accompany that copy with videos that explain how you think, and then so much so where I've had executive assistants for years now that are working overseas, and they're in my inbox. They're cleaning my inbox. They're booking meetings for me to make videos, Loom videos, where I say, okay, here's how I process my inbox. When this kind of email comes in, this is what I do with it. And this is why. You got to get people, you got to let them inside of your brain. Otherwise, if you're not training them properly, they're always going to rely on you to give them the feedback or direction. Mm-hmm. Eventually, you want people to be able to, on their own, make the decisions. None of us want to manage people. That's the last thing that we want to do. We want to work on cool projects. We want to be creative. Sometimes we want to edit and jump in, but we don't want to 80% of our job to be managing people. That's just I would be surprised. I don't think I've ever talked to a video business owner. It's like, man, I love managing people. It's so fun. It's like, I love people, but I don't want to manage. I want them to just do their thing. And the best way to do that is let them get inside of your brain and tell them why you make the decisions that you make.
I think that's an important distinction, is to give the why. If you're staying very black and white and just being like, this is what I do, then they'll never fully understand it. And they'll probably make the same mistake again. But if you're like, here's an edit, let me show you how I would do this, or here's how it's looked in the past, or something we've done or we saw somebody do, and they can look at it. It's, I think with editing, and this, and all editors know this, is you can look at a video and be like, there's something off about this. When the edit's just not totally there. And it's really hard to put that into words. It doesn't quite flow the way you want it to.
Yep.
And I think when you can teach somebody that, it probably really does come back to that why. Here's why we do it this way. Let me show you how it looks the other way. And then you see that night and day difference. You're absolutely right.
There's this thing somebody shared with me years ago called the leadership square, and I'm going to try not to botch it. But I would normally say Zephan, I'm going to hire you to edit this project. So here's a finished project. Here's kind of how I do it. So go do it. And then you would do it, and then I would give you feedback, and then you'd be depressed because my feedback was just 8,000 things that I have feedback on. The leadership square says I do, you watch, right? So I'm gonna do this. You're gonna watch me. So this could be for editing, this could be for shooting, this could be for email, whatever. The second part is I do, you help, right? So now you're kind of trying to lead me a little bit, well, you do it like that, and then the third stage is you do, I help. So I'm helping you now. And then the fourth stage is you do, I watch. And if you skip any of those, then you're going to end up with stressful situations. You're not going to get somebody that can do this on their own. They're going to continue to rely on you. And so, but when you go through the four parts of that leadership square, that is how you can work with somebody for years and be in sync and not feel like I'm managing this person, but they totally get it and they can do this on their own.
Yeah, and I think it creates a safe space where the editor won't come back thinking I'm not going to him to say, oh, this sucked, this was horrible, don't do this. It's we're working together here to make this better. And I learned that from Apple, actually, when I worked there. They had this thing called fearless feedback. And the idea was to create a space where you weren't afraid to give or receive feedback. And that was for everybody. And so if everybody on the team feels that way, it means that you can come from this safe place of here's the feedback. You didn't do anything wrong. We're working on making this the best that it can be together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Dude, that's so good. Well, before we wrap up, I really want to dive into, I know we talked a little bit about Riverside. You mentioned you've got multiple clients, offers, like 5-figure services. I would just love to hear, like, what does that look like? How are you getting these clients, and what does that, I don't know, what does that process look like for you?
Sure. A great example of one of these projects, by the way, was the United Nations Foundation approached me, and I'll explain real quick the context of how I met them. But they approached me and said, we've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 people in like 7 different countries that all need to get interviewed, and obviously we don't want to go send a team out there and spend 15-20 grand for a team for one day for one person. How do we do this? And I had been working with Riverside for other projects in the past and thought it was a perfect fit. So that project in the end became something in the neighborhood of $15,000 to $20,000, when half the work is me sitting here like this, talking to you and getting someone on and just interviewing them, and just making sure that, we can get a decent looking camera shot for them, which most smartphones are 4K cameras now. So they've got them in their pocket already. The context of meeting that client was actually from a photographer that I kept finding myself on events with. And what would happen is he would get asked all the time, hey, you do photos, do you do video? Everybody, it's kind of like the people at a wedding that are like, come take a picture of us. And you're like, it's a video camera, right? Like nobody knows the real difference. But once I had met him and run into him a few times, I was like, hey, we should collaborate or find a way to work together. And he was like, I have a couple clients that occasionally ask for video, and we've like tried to do it in house just because we have a DSLR. And, they sent me an interview one time. They did a Bill Nye the Science Guy downtown National Mall in Washington, D.C. And they were like, we didn't have a microphone, so we just used the internal mic. And like, I was like, if we work together, this won't happen because we'll have the right gear. We can make sure that you don't have this issue. So photographers are a great example of what I consider referral partners, is finding other businesses that can refer to you. Photo is an easy one. Website designers, another easy one. Oh, you've got a new website. I noticed you don't have a video on your old one. Do you want to put a video on your new one? Like, here's the videographer I partner with. Another one is if you're in real estate video, realtors, mortgage brokers, there's staging companies. There's so many companies in the real estate industry that could refer you. Another referral from me, since I do live streaming, has actually been IT companies that go in and do the installs of getting your internet and wiring set up in offices and buildings. I have an IT company that's referred me at least 3 or 4 houses of worship because they've been in there doing an install or fixing something, and they kind of mention like, oh, do you ever live stream your holiday services? And then it's just an instant connection. So building those referral partners is huge and massive. And being able to take some of that work and offload it to something like Riverside, where it's like, I don't have to load in my gear. I don't have to drive anywhere. If I really want to, I can ship them like a little portable, like phone stand tripod thingy, or a little portable light or a mic. But being able to offer that to them, I've actually been able to charge a premium now. And half the time it's like, jump on the call, I turn off my camera, the client does all the interviewing, I'm just kind of monitoring it. And I can charge a higher premium to work with that footage because we're doing so much more to pretty it up and add some animation and some other things to make it look good. And clients will pay for convenience for sure. They don't want to have to like get their whole office turned over for the day just to get a video crew in there. This is just one way that I've been able to offer a different option to people. And it's like an upsell, a cross sell, and it makes life easier on me. Half the time I'm taking the footage, sending it to my editor and saying, here you go. But it's just been a huge alternative option for me. A lot of the times when clients say no to something, sometimes it's based on price, right? But other times it's because they don't necessarily see the value in what you're giving to them. And so when I can say, here's the value, you're not going to have to go to work today. You're going to be able to sit at your computer desk. You're not going to have to send a crew out to somebody on the other side of the globe. You can save thousands of dollars doing this. It's a much easier sell. So once they see that value, it's the sky's the limit.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. First off, the idea of channel partners. So we can spin our wheels and try to land, this particular client, like an interior designer or this law firm or this restaurant. And at least for what we've done for the longest time are these brand films. And it's like, okay, once we do a brand film for the law firm, they don't need another brand film. Okay, so do we have anything else to offer them? Well, no, we didn't for the longest time. So now we got to find another law firm and we can use that video to sell, which is nice. But man, what if you went to the Law Firm Marketing Association or legal, it's LMA, it's something like that. But what if you went to them where law firms pay, I don't know how many thousands of dollars per year to be a part of this association, and you got on the board, you donate your time to kind of hang out and whatever. And so you're meeting all of these marketing communications people inside of the LMA. And now you've got this like massive potential of people that could hire you. Or you work with a marketing agency or a PR firm or a college a big university that has a bunch of colleges. So think strategically about partnerships where it would make sense. It would benefit them to refer you. It's going to make them look good. And they've got access to more of the kind of people that you want to work with. So I love that idea. Thanks for sharing that. And then I just want to say too, for the longest time, we did like luxury high-end wedding films for the first 7 or 8 years of me being in business. And so I got used to just creating everything and making everything beautiful and perfect and all that. And I loved it. And we've created some incredibly beautiful and moving films. And then we get into corporate film, and I wanted to kind of take that same approach. And so we have created some of the most gorgeous, beautiful, amazing corporate films that are powerful. Also, and I've stayed away from this for so long, but I'm just realizing that if we really want to serve our clients well, creating content that doesn't necessarily look as good as I want it to, but it still serves a purpose, is very, very important and helps make you hard to replace. So when you say something like, I'm going to tell the client, like, well, just use your iPhone, set this up and it'll be good enough. The old version of me would have like cringed and been like, no, don't do that. But I will say that the way that social media and the quality of, smartphones today, all of that stuff has led us to a place where people are going to create this content with or without you. And so maybe have an offering where it's like, hey, here's our high end, beautiful cinematic brand film option. But if you don't need that or want that or think that's going to move the needle, we also have this like, social offering where we may or may not use an iPhone. We have like nicer cameras, but the approach is going to be a lot simpler. It's really going to be about the content and not necessarily about, all of the lighting and all of the stuff. So I would just say for some of us who have struggled and wrestled, I'm kind of coming on the other side of this where it's like, man, for us to be able to offer to this law firm that we just did this brand film, for us to be able to offer some smaller like social content type videos where it doesn't have to look and feel super cinematic. It's just like, man, they just need this content, whether it's internal or external. Show up for your clients and help them, serve them. If they say we don't need that, is there something that you can offer that will help them? And those things will probably grow your business.
Yeah, a lot of that comes down to just that initial discovery call. I'm typically hopping on a Zoom with them, and it's really kind of an interview, right? I'm interviewing them to really dig in and find out, because many people will show up and just say, I need a video. And you'll be like, what kind of video? And then they're like, well, we saw this other firm do this. And it's like, okay, well, do you know if that worked for them? No, I don't. I just saw it and it looked pretty. It's like, okay, well, I can sell you a shiny object, but I'm doing you a disservice. Let's actually figure out, what it is that you're trying to solve here. And then, use our expertise and what we know about building an audience, about getting more visibility around your product or service. And let's take it from there. And I think that really builds that trust factor with the clients, because they're like, wow, he like actually genuinely cared about growing my business and not about just selling me some new shiny object. And that's the way to create clients for life, is they trust you, and it's just game on from there.
Dude, love it. So good. Zephan, this has been really fun. How can people, I know you've got a YouTube channel, you've got your own community of videographers and filmmakers. Where are some of the places that people can find you if they want to connect with you after this episode?
Yeah, the YouTube channel is just Zephan Moses. I'll teach a whole bunch of stuff about live streaming. We'll do some occasional gear reviews and talk a little bit about business side of things too. And then I've also got a Facebook group. It's called Videographers Connect. I gain no money from it. It is just a resource for people to come to. There's 13,500 videographers at the time of this recording, and half the posts in there are, I'm looking for somebody in XYZ city. Here's my budget. I need a camera operator with, a Sony FX6 tomorrow. And we get people work because it's people constantly posting, looking for jobs, and then on occasion asking for just help or advice. So that's just a free resource open to everybody. There's no sell, there's no pitch. It is just something that's out there to help anyone and everyone in our industry.
Love that. That is awesome. Thanks for doing that. Really, really good. Well, dude, this has been a blast, man. Thank you for bringing the heat, the goodness. How do you want to leave us today?
Man, I would just say, I think that last piece that we talked about there is so important, is just figure out where to add the value. When you can show people the value in what you provide and not just saying, I have a camera, I can make videos, do you want them? You can say, I have tools that can grow your business or can bring more phone calls in or more emails or whatever. Would you like that? That's where you're really going to land more clients. And then once you do that, start to hone in that process, right? Get your standard procedures down, get your work down so that you can outsource it to an editor, get those processes down so that you're not stuck being the person that's working, inside the business, but rather you're working on the business, and you can kind of focus on bringing in more work, building those relationships, and not having to be the guy that's sitting there at 10 o'clock at night editing revision number 18 that's got to be delivered by tomorrow morning.
I love that. Good advice. Sage advice. I think there's some wisdom behind that, maybe some life experience too. I love it. Thank you, my friend. This has been awesome. Really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All right, friend. Thank you so much for hanging out with Zephan and myself today. If this episode was good and you want to let me know, shoot me a DM. You can email me, ryan@studiosherpas.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can leave a comment there and say, this was terrible, or man, that was a really good point when Zephan said this, or when Ryan said that. Feel free to do that. If you think somebody could benefit from this episode, take a screenshot, screen grab, whatever you call it. My kids make fun of me because I say the wrong thing. I forget which one is the right one, but text it to somebody and say, you should listen to this. This was good. This was interesting. And again, don't forget about Six Figure Filmmaker Workshop at studiosherpas.com/workshop. I'll be back next week with another episode. Looking forward to that one. And let me just encourage you. You've got this, my friend. You are not alone. You don't have to be. You can plug into the community that I've built. There are other video communities out there that you can plug into if you haven't. If you don't like the vibe that is here, not much offense, but come on, I'm a lot of fun. Sarcastic, irreverent, a guy of faith, mix all those things together, plus favorite show is The Office. This is what you get. Anyway, if you've listened or watched this far, I commend you. Kudos, hats off to you. All of those things. I'm gonna go now because I'm probably gonna say something I'll regret later. So let's just be done. Reach out if I can help you with anything, and I'll talk to you soon. Okay, see you, bye.